Welcome to 1850 Main Street, a place where friends get together and talk about their country and hope for a brighter future.
David Zanotti and Alan C. Duncan are at the table today. Have you ever heard of G.K. Chesterton? We're discussing Alan's book, Gilbert Jack, today at 1850 Main Street.
So nobody knows the answer to this question anymore but you.
Uh-oh.
So you are now one of the world's great and most profound experts. Why should anybody give a hoot about G.K. Chesterton? I mean, does that guy even exist, or is he a breakfast cereal? Is that the name for a breakfast cereal?
A breakfast cereal. I feel like it would be...
Or a sausage company.
Yeah. Yeah, he would probably like that. He'd get a food named after him. Although some of his biographers say that he actually didn't eat that much, that his great size was perhaps due to like a thyroid condition or something like that.
So he was a great-sized person.
Yes, he was.
Did he live like back in the 1800s or what?
He was born in the 1800s. He died in 1936. So a lot of his work was throughout the early 1900s and into the teens, and he was pretty much off the scene. He caught just the rise of Hitler.
Yeah, 33.
And then he was denouncing Hitler and the Nazis and all this type of stuff, but he passed before World War II.
Just right before World War II.
Yeah.
Okay, so what was he? Some kind of a preacher, teacher? What was he?
No, he was an art school dropout, I like to say. He went to the Slade School of Art in England, and he dropped out. He could draw really well. He used a lot of pastels and things like that. But yeah, he dropped out and became a journalist, essentially. Journalist and a writer of various types of books.
The first guy, did he create fake news?
Fake? No, I hope not. No, I think he was about 100 years ahead of the news.
Yeah, so just so everyone would know, at that point in time, if there wasn't a table separating us, Alan definitely would have tried to hit me with something.
Turn the tables.
There it was.
No.
There it was. I just had somebody send me a note about turning tables.
Yeah, you got to find it. But yeah, he wrote a column for multiple newspapers. He started a magazine at one point, but he was really a columnist.
Okay, so he was a columnist.
Essayist.
Back when print was the primary, in fact, singular mode or conversation, but this is prior to telegraph.
He did do a little radio. He did do a little bit of radio.
But when he started, these technologies would not have been there. So toward the end of his career, he had radio, obviously telegraph, and he had print.
Yeah.
Okay, so he was pre-internet.
Well, and he was every type of written media you could do. So he was doing newspapers, he was doing essays, he was doing novels, he was writing poetry. So pretty much and then he was doing theological works, popular level at the time theological works.
Did any of his stuff turn into any other products people would be familiar with?
Oh, sure. That's actually a good question. Father Brown was his mystery stories, sort of his version of Sherlock Holmes. But he was solving crimes not based on deductive reasoning, but more so based on his knowledge of human nature, because Father Brown was a Catholic priest who heard people's confessions a lot of times. And so he was very...
Oh, he had inside information, not fair.
Yeah, he was just in tune with human nature, and he had a great understanding of...
Well, Father Brown mysteries have been packaged into a number of film projects and television, if I'm not mistaken.
BBC did one that I've heard is good. I haven't seen the BBC version, but there's one on Netflix. I think it's on Netflix now. A lot of times these things get sold all over the place. But yeah, that's the more modern one that they've done. That it's okay. Gets a little soft in some places. But
is that the one where the guy that plays Father Brown is actually
Mr. Weasley?
Mr. Weasley
in Harry Potter. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, he does a nice job. He does a nice job.
Okay.
I picture Father Brown a little differently from reading it.
Okay.
They're very good. That'd be a good place for someone to start if you like mystery stories, because they're short stories. These types of writings were published in magazines at the time.
Okay, so is this guy some conservative ideologue?
I think he would be considered conservative in some of his opinions today, but I don't think that he could be packaged that easily into a category. His famous debate opponent was George Bernard Shaw. So they would debate things like capitalism and communism and socialism and things like that. And you can read some of those debates.
Who was Shaw?
Online. George Bernard Shaw was another great writer, thinker of the time, but he was coming from I wouldn't say necessarily an atheistic point of view. He would consider himself maybe broadly spiritual, but he was coming from a much more of a.
Why when I say the name George Bernard Shaw, do I automatically think of classical music or theater or opera or?
Yeah, I don't know. He just maybe has one of those names,
Okay.
but he was considered more on the liberal spectrum back then.
So they were debating partners.
Yes, but they were friends too, which is interesting and somewhat rare today that you find people who disagree so strongly, but yet can still be friends.
Okay, so who did Chesterton influence?
Well, he influenced a lot of people. The one most people would know would probably be C.S. Lewis. So he had a great, profound influence on Lewis. They never met, and I think that was a bit of a regret that C.S. Lewis had.
Yeah, because Chesterton died, you said, in 36, and Lewis died in 63. So Lewis was a good bit younger than him.
Yeah, but they met in print, one could say. Lewis owned a lot of his books, and he read them, and he marked them up.
So you did a project on that very subject.
Yeah.
And it turned into an audiobook called Gilbert and Jack. All right. This is kind of a cool project.
It was really fun to work on.
All right. And in a way, you listen to it and you go, nah, that'll never work. I mean, that's what are the odds that was going to work? So what happened? How did it work?
Well, I found out Dale Ahlquist is the president of the Chesterton Society, and I heard him give an address, or he was speaking somewhere, and he mentioned that C.S. Lewis owned all these Chesterton books and that he wrote in them. And he had mentioned that he saw some of them. And I thought, wow, that would be so cool to see those books. But I thought these have got to be in England, probably somewhere buried in some archive you'll never get to see. Come to find out, a lot of them are in Chicago at the Wade Center at Wheaton College. And so I contacted them and said, hey, can we, check them out? It's like you have to go, they reserve them and you sit down in a room, but you can look at these books. So again, these are books that G.K. Chesterton wrote, but C.S. Lewis owned and read and wrote in. And so my dad and I took a little field trip to the college and sat there and looked through 11 copies of these books. And we jotted down every place that Lewis made a note when he was reading.
So you looked at 11 books written by G.K. Chesterton that C.S. Lewis had read. And had made notations in them.
Yes. Yeah, and a lot of times, sometimes...
Oh, man, was there anything like, this is really dumb?
Nah, there was a question mark. Chesterton calls Peter a snob at one point. And there was
the Apostle Peter?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it was... I can't remember if that was Orthodox. I think it was an Orthodoxy. But there was a little question mark. That was like, what, a snob? Was he a snob?
So did you find a good amount of notations?
Yes, we did. The most fruitful ones, Orthodoxy, Lewis wrote a bunch in. What he would do, he'd flip to the back pages that are usually empty in a book, and if there was an idea on, let's say there was an idea on page 76 in the book, he would write, say, 76, and then like the first line of the paragraph, or the big idea from the paragraph. And so he would create sort of a running index of thoughts for himself in the back of the books.
Wow.
It was cool. You kind of felt like you were reading with him.
Yeah, like right over his shoulder.
Yeah, you're just kind of looking over C.S. Lewis's shoulder as he learned these big thoughts.
Thanks for stopping by at 1850 Main Street. We're glad you're here. Do you want to learn more about what's really going on behind the scenes in public policy? Tune in to the Public Square on over 200 radio stations coast to coast, or download the free Public Square mobile app from your app store. Just look for The Lamppost. Find out what America's talking about at thepublicsquare.com.
You would not probably be interested if you got into my library.
Oh, man. You got some annotations in your library there?
Well, I can't read without writing. If this is worthwhile, then I'm going to write on the book. I've been doing this since I was very young, writing in books, because I'm going to come back to them. I can't imagine any book, and I know Lewis said something about this, which I can't remember, but he always talked about reading a book more than once.
Yeah.
And I just can't imagine having a book that's worth anything at all and not reading multiple times.
Sure.
And so I will usually write them up pretty seriously.
Well, that's going to be a great treasure trove for your family. Your grandchildren someday will be able to go through
They
those.
have the same interest. They'll find some interesting comments.
Yeah.
And I'll avoid some of the ones that I had to read because I knew I would disagree dramatically. But in any case, so this became an audiobook, Gilbert and Jack. So how did you, because I'm intrigued because these are very fascinating people. Chesterton and Lewis, very fascinating people. But there's a whole lot of people that this would be an introductory.
Sure.
So how did you make this interesting? I mean, obviously, how did you, it is interesting. So how did you communicate your interest?
Well, to that point, I do think this could almost serve as an introduction for people who are just getting familiar with their work. The fact that it's an audiobook that comes in at just under 3 hours. So for an audiobook, there's audiobooks that are 15, 20 hours long.
I've heard that.
Yeah, so if you listen to a book, if you're familiar with doing that, 3 hours is not a lot. But even still, we wanted to make it even more interesting to listen to. So I like when authors read the book to you. I think that's like a nice gesture. So I did read the book, but there was no way I was going to read the quotes from G.K. Chesterton and C.S. Lewis in just a American accent. I couldn't do it. It felt wrong. So we hired a voice actor to portray both men. And there are audio samples of both these men that you can find online. And so I sent him audio samples of both guys.
I knew there's a limited amount from Lewis.
There's a little bit of Chesterton.
But there's somebody got, what kind of recording device?
Well, I don't know. It must have been early. I mean, it was early radio and stuff. His voice sounds very high pitched. It's higher pitched than you would think. So I don't know if that's due to the recording.
Okay, well, it would have been radio, I guess. So there would have been, I don't know how we did recording.
It would have been the 1930s. Yeah, so 30. I mean, you had recording devices in the 30s.
Yeah. I mean, we were making records in the 30s. Started making records back in the 20s, just toward the late 20s. That's pretty primitive.
Yeah, there's a recording of him talking about architecture, his thoughts on architecture, which is actually an interest of mine as well. He talks about it as the only art that you have to live inside. So he said there's something to be said for having the ugliest house on the street because you don't have to see it. So I mean, he's just full of this kind of stuff.
So if I want to get your audiobook, how do I get it?
It's online right now at the Public Square's YouTube page. It's just audio, so it's the cover, but you can listen to it. It's broken up by chapters, so you can go to YouTube, go to the Public Square's YouTube page, and it's right there.
So thepublicsquare.com. I always have to say the or the publicsquare.com.
Well, I would just go to YouTube and type in the Public Square.
Okay.
Or you could type in Gilbert and Jack, Alan C. Duncan in YouTube, and that's what'll pop up. Yeah, you could just whatever search engine.
Is that on our phone app also?
It is on the phone app. Yes.
So it's on the Public Square's phone app as well, and that you can find in your app store. Just search for the Public Square and look for the lamppost, and that's how you'll get it. Download it. You can get Gilbert and Jack for free.
Yeah.
So you're in that freebie mode.
Yeah.
You're giving this away.
Yeah, we are. It's out there. It's available now. There is an ebook that is available for purchase on Amazon as well.
Okay.
That's an ebook format. So yeah, there's ways that people could purchase it if they want to read the text version, but I really think that the audiobook is the place to start, and that is absolutely free.
Well, I have listened to it, and it is very much worthwhile. It is intriguing. You can just, if you have any interest at all in these two authors, their works, or you're just interested in hearing about conversations from a historical period with two brilliant minds who've influenced the world, it's a nice place, and it's a very refreshing composition. You did a nice job with the music and the voices, and the whole thing is well done.
Well, I really appreciate that, and I appreciate the opportunity to talk about it. But yeah, some of the topics that are covered is talk about marriage, talk about patriotism. Like, is it right for Christians to be patriotic? Talk about history, talk about names. Are names important, and why? Why are they important? And of course, just talk about theology in general.
How long ago did you release this book?
Oh my goodness, that's probably been out about 3 years now.
Okay, you're still talking about it like you finished it yesterday.
Oh, well, it's short. So you can listen to a short book many times.
So how do I get it again?
I would just
Amazon
type in
for the
Amazon for ebook.
Ebook.
Text,
Okay.
The phone app.
Listen.
Phone app. Public Square
the
phone
Public
app.
Square phone app at your app store, or visit us at...
I would just type in Alan C. Duncan, Gilbert and Jack, see
YouTube.
what pops up. YouTube? Yeah,
Okay.
it's right there.
The conversations are just getting started. To get connected, check out 1850mainstreet.com. We don't data mine anyone or sell your information. Subscribe today so you don't miss a single conversation. We'll see you next time here at 1850 Main Street.